He was the secret weapon no one was meant to remember, an agent whose triumph would come only after his final breath. His code name spun through the corridors of Allied headquarters, shadowed, whispered, barely more than a ghost. Yet his mission altered not just the outcome of a campaign, but the fate of an entire continent. His name, Major William Martin, Royal Marines. The task he carried out became legend. Yet history's strangest twist? Major Martin never truly existed. This is the story of Operation Mincemeat, a deception so daring, so improbable, that even those who devised it wondered if they were outwitting themselves. And at its heart lies a single, silent figure, a man who never knew he would become the most consequential dead spy in history. To understand the audacity of the plan, we have to return to early 1943, a world riven by war, desperation, and the faint promise of Allied resurgence. Germany's armies stretched from the English Channel to the deserts of North Africa. On the European continent, the Axis grip seemed unbreakable. But the Allies had been pushing back. Victories at El Alamein and Stalingrad had cracked the facade of Nazi invincibility. The next move had to be decisive. The British and Americans debated where to strike. Their gaze fell to Sicily, an island sitting at the crossroads of the Mediterranean, the gateway to the soft underbelly of Mussolini's Italy. Take Sicily, and the doors to Europe would swing open. Fail, and the war might drag on, the cost and lives immeasurable. But even as they planned, the Allies faced a dilemma. Their enemy was not only strong in arms, but sharp in mind. German intelligence would be watching, scouring for clues, ready to pounce on any hint of Allied intentions. Sicily seemed the obvious target, and in war, the obvious is rarely safe. In London, the fight for Sicily began not with soldiers or ships, but with a brainstorming session in a smoke-filled basement. Intelligence officers convened in secret, tossing around schemes as wild as they were desperate. Some advocated for elaborate radio traffic hoaxes, others for dropping fake battle plans. But it was a young lieutenant, Charles Cholmondeley, who offered the outlandish notion that would change history's course. What if we planted misinformation on a corpse? Let it wash ashore where the Germans could find it? They would believe they'd found a genuine secret. Even among Britain's risk-loving spy masters, the proposal seemed mad, a macabre page lifted from a crime novel. But madness, they realized, might be their greatest ally. Quickly, two masters of deception, Ewen Montagu of the Royal Navy and Charles Cholmondeley of MI5, volunteered to lead the plot. Operation Mincemeat was born. Its goal was elegant and simple. Feed Nazi Germany a lie so convincing that they would shift their armies away from Sicily, leaving it vulnerable to invasion. It began with a grisly search. They needed a body, one that could believably pass as a British officer, drowned in a tragic accident at sea. But bodies available through normal government channels were few. Most who died in wartime London bore the unmistakable wounds of violence, or bore illnesses that would arouse a pathologist's suspicions. Ultimately, a pathologist found a solution in an unclaimed corpse, a man in his early 30s, whose lungs were filled with fluid from acute pneumonia. To forensic science of the day, the death would appear indistinguishable from drowning. Arrangements were delicate. Even in wartime, the dignity of the deceased was paramount. The man's identity was hidden, his sacrifice explained only in the vaguest terms. He will serve his country, the family was assured. And from that moment, he became, for all official purposes, Major William Martin. Clothes were the first order. The corpse was fitted with the crisp uniform of the Royal Marines, the correct insignia, the worn creases of a jacket that had seen just enough use, boots lacquered but not too new. But for the deception to work, more was needed than cloth and brass. Montagu and Cholmondeley became the architects of an entire life to make Major Martin real. His pockets were crammed with the miscellany of daily existence. Ticket stubs for theater at the West End, a bill from a tailor, a stern letter from his landlord about overdue rent. There were receipts from a London club, keys from a supposed address on Dorset Street, a receipt for an engagement ring, and, most evocatively, a pair of love letters from a fictional fiancée, Pam. They commissioned a secretary to pen the letters, imbued with longing and gossip, with a lipstick kiss pressed to the paper. Pam's photograph, a cheerful, fresh-faced woman who worked in MI5, was tucked carefully into his wallet. The centerpiece of the plan lay in a battered briefcase, chained to his wrist. Its contents were treasonous gold. A letter from Lieutenant General Sir Archibald Nye, Vice Chief of the Imperial General Staff, to General Sir Harold Alexander, British commander in North Africa. The document was professionally forged, every phrase parsed with double meaning. It was bland enough to evade suspicion, yet filled with references to Allied operations in Sardinia and Greece. Operations the Germans desperately wanted to anticipate. The word Sicily never appeared, except as a passing afterthought. But even these details were not enough. The planners obsessed over the narrative. If Major Martin had died at sea, his story needed supporting evidence. So, they selected the southwest coast of Spain, a country neutral on paper, but whose intelligence services were riddled with German sympathizers, as their staging ground. Huelva, a sleepy town overlooking the Atlantic, was perfectly chosen, close enough to Nazi agents, yet outside British reach. The body was placed in a steel canister packed with dry ice and shuttled south by train, guarded with all the care of a living diplomat. The CSS Seraph, a submarine with a passenger list that included only the dead, took its strange cargo into the Gulf of Cadiz. On April 30th, 1943, just before dawn, the crew surfaced, recited a prayer, and slipped Major Martin gently into the cool waters. To complete the illusion, they let drift a rubber dinghy and a well-scuffed life jacket, as if the officer had survived a crash at sea only to die before rescue. The next morning, a fisherman stumbled upon the body, half buried in kelp. Local Spanish police, used to oddities but unsettled by the military uniform and British dog tags, recovered the body and sent word to the British vice-consul, Francis Hasselden. The wheels of espionage whirred into motion to IN Madrid. The Germans waited hungrily for word from their contacts. Reports of a drowned British officer with a briefcase shackled to him. Spanish authorities performed an autopsy, pronounced death by drowning, and after the most basic of investigations, released the briefcase into diplomatic custody. Hasselden, playing his part, made the formal request that the highly sensitive papers be returned untouched, layering his request with just enough anxiety to whet Berlin's appetite. But the Germans moved swiftly. Their agents in Spain, one, Adolf Claus, ranked among the Abwehr's finest, gained access to the documents. The letters were steamed open, then carefully resealed and returned to the British, accompanied by a cordial note from the Spanish authorities. Weeks later, forensic examination in London revealed subtle scratches left by German photo-reconnaissance equipment, confirming their suspicions. The bait had been swallowed. In Berlin, the dossier sped up the chain of command. Abwehr spymaster Admiral Wilhelm Canaris reviewed the evidence. The reports seemed irrefutable. Major Martin's papers spoke with the full confidence of the British elite, hinting at an attack far from Sicily. The Germans notified Rome and even sent a personal memo to Hitler himself. The trap was set. Hitler ordered panzer divisions to Greece and Yugoslavia. Luftwaffe units were redeployed. Precious artillery and mines were shipped away from Sicily to fortify regions now deemed essential. All while Allied planners watched, monitoring Axis troop movements with increasing satisfaction and a dash of disbelief. Their gamble was working. The dead man's cover held on July 9, 1943, Operation Husky, the long-planned Allied invasion of Sicily, thundered ashore. Facing only token resistance in many key areas, British and American troops quickly established a foothold. German commanders, grappling with chaos, soon realized too late they had been duped by a corpse. The aftermath resounded far beyond a single battlefield. The capture of Sicily opened the Mediterranean to Allied navies, precipitated the fall of Mussolini, and marked the beginning of the end for the Axis in southern Europe. Intelligence analysts on both sides spent years dissecting the operation, marveling at its simplicity and its nerve. In Huelva, under a sun-drenched sky, local dignitaries and curious townsfolk erected a modest headstone. It read, "William Martin, Major, Royal Marines, died aged 33, with the date of his final mission." Flowers appear there to this day, left by those who remember the role of courage and deception in history's darkest hours. Yet the true identity of the man who lay beneath remained secret for decades, protected by the oath sworn to his family. He had no idea, in life or in death, that his body would carry the hope of nations, the fate of armies, or the thanks of a world he helped to save. That is the story of Major William Martin. the spy who, through a labyrinth of invention and courage, won a battle he never saw. Proof that, in the shadows, imagination can be as mighty as any army, and sometimes, the most unassuming hero lies silent, unnamed, and immortal beneath the stone. That if this tale of silent courage and imaginative warfare fascinated you, subscribe for more deep dives into history's hidden plots and forgotten heroes.